Hey guys, this is your host Thomas Tyree here from On the Hot Podcast. Today, this will be episode 205 for you guys today. And to kick off this week's episode, I'll be sharing my thoughts on the NBA playoffs, the first round of the NBA playoffs that are taking place right now in the NBA today. So I'll be going over the Eastern Conference and the Western Conference in this segment. Starting off with the Eastern Conference, you had the first seeded Cleveland Cavaliers sweep the 8th seed in Miami Heat. They swept them, and that series is officially put to bed. We'll be getting the Cavs versus the Pacers in the next round. I'll get to the Pacers later on in the segment. But with this Cavs and Miami Heat series, I'm not going to lie, this was embarrassing being a Miami Heat fan, witness this 4-game series that took place. And this is why I preached on the podcast last week. It just made the most sense for the Miami Heat to lose in the play-in tournament. You don't want to lose on purposely, but for their sake, it was best for business for them to lose in the play-in tournament because you would have had a lottery pick, and anything could happen in the NBA lottery. And the Miami Heat without Jimmy Butler do not have a fighting chance against the Cleveland Cavaliers or the Boston Celtics if they did earn the 7th seed. So, the Cavs won this series by a total of 122 points. That is the most lopsided NBA playoff series in league history. So, a prideful 37-win and 45-loss Miami Heat team that was the 10th seed in the Eastern Conference found a way to get to the NBA playoffs as the 8th seed. You got to really evaluate the play-in tournament at this particular point because the Miami Heat were in no position to even make the 8th seed, and they didn't deserve it because 122 points, that's a non-competitive playoff series. So even with the trash talk between Darius Garland and Tyler Hero, it didn't wake up the Miami Heat, and the Miami Heat did not even go out swinging in Game 4. In South Beach, they were down 72-33 at halftime. Tyler Hero, if this is the franchise guy that's supposed to step up, said Jimmy Butler is now in the Bay Area with the Golden State Warriors. He didn't show up to play in a winner-go-home scenario where he only scored 4 points, shot 1 for 10 from the field, 1 for 9 shooting from three-point range. That's disgusting, and that's not Miami Heat culture basketball. So, Pat Riley's going to have to take a hard look in the mirror. He's going to have to swallow his pride in his mouth. No Diddy. He's going to have to swallow his pride here because this Miami Heat team needs some serious evaluations this summer. We need a superstar in South Beach. There's no way that Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo have shown me that they're ready to carry this Miami Heat franchise to the next chapter without a superstar guiding these players. So they're going to take a hard look here, but the Cavs were just a more physical, more dominant team in this series, and well-deserved. And they will be playing the Indiana Pacers in the next round. So the Boston Celtics, the second seeded Boston Celtics, and the 7th seeded Orlando Magic, that series is currently going to be played tonight. As I record this segment, the game hasn't happened yet. So the Celtics lead this series 3-1. Now, this series has shown me that the Boston Celtics are going to be an unstoppable force in the East, and they're going to be hard for anybody to derail in a 7-game series throughout the playoffs. But Jaylen Brown showed me in Game 2, I questioned the health of Jaylen Brown for the duration of the NBA playoffs because he had a bruised knee. He was taking knee injections in his right knee, and I knew Jaylen Brown wasn't 100%. But once I saw Jaylen Brown go off in Game 2 without Jason Tatum by his side, scoring 36 points, I knew that Jaylen Brown will be A-okay for this NBA playoffs, for the Celtics to possibly go on back-to-back runs this year. But Game 3 was probably the best game of this series between the Celtics and the Magic. That was when the Magic won this game, beating the Celtics at home 95-93. That was great team basketball that the Orlando Magic played that night with Paolo Banchero and Franz Warner. They stepped up and dropped a combined total of 61 points in that ball game. But Game 4, that's when the Celtics turned it up again, and they proved that why they're the more superior team over this Orlando Magic team. And they just have so many ways to beat you. That's what makes this Boston Celtics team special. What Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Kristaps Porzingis, Jrue Holiday, Derek White. I mean, there's so many weapons that could beat you on any given night, and they're a great transition team offensively and defensively. Hard for anybody that's going to beat them in a 7-game series, but the Celtics look like they're going to be moving on to the next round. And to play the winner of this Knicks and Pistons series, which right now, between the 3rd seeded New York Knicks and the 6th seeded Detroit Pistons, the Knicks have a 3-1 lead over the Pistons. Now, this Game 5 has not happened yet as I record this segment, but crazy how this series is going. I mean, Game 3, the inexperience showed for the Detroit Pistons. They lack that playoff experience compared to what some players on the New York Knicks have. But the playoff players of Jalen Brunson and Karl Anthony Towns, they have showed they have playoff experience. Jalen Brunson being one of the best players in the playoffs that we've seen over the last few years. And Karl Anthony Towns just went to the Western Conference Finals last time. They scored a combined of 61 points in Game 3. But for the Pistons to lean on Malik Beasley shooting 3 for 18 from the field. Why is this man taking 18 shots in a pivotal game, a swing game that you could have swung in your momentum with you having 2 home court games in Detroit? I think that hurt the Pistons. And then looking at Game 4, what happened on Sunday, the Pistons, they started out flat, and it took them time to get picked up offensively. And they weren't shooting well from three-point range in the first half. There were some sloppy turnovers, sloppy basketball that they were playing, and the New York Knicks capitalized on it. And the Knicks were playing great defensive basketball in the first half. And then the second half was an absolute cinema. The Pistons were actually outscoring the Knicks 39-23 from the minute and 44 seconds in the second quarter all the way to the end of the third quarter. They went on one hell of a run. It was back and forth buckets in the fourth quarter. The Knicks hitting that clutch fadeaway shot that Karl Anthony Towns hit. I don't know. He was leaning back, and I don't know how the hell he made that shot. Then he made that deep three-point range shot. But my heart just goes out to the Pistons because Tim Hardaway Jr. was fouled. He was hacked with the final shot that was taken in that game. How was that not a foul delivered by Josh Hart? That should have been 3 free throws that Tim Hardaway Jr. would have shot at the free throw line. And most likely, that with the time remaining, that probably would have won the game for the Pistons. I felt like the Pistons were robbed, and now they're down 3-1, fighting for survival. And then the final series, the Indiana Pacers, the 4th seed Indiana Pacers and the 5th seed Milwaukee Bucks. That series has concluded with the Pacers putting away the Bucks in a 4-1 series. Now, I'm really surprised that the Bucks are they did not keep this series competitive. They had no fire lit underneath them other than Game 3. And the Pacers have just been the more dominant team, more physical team, and they just wanted this series more than the Bucks. This was supposed to be a rematch from last year. The Bucks weren't 100% healthy. This was their time to get back on the same exact Indiana Pacers roster, but the Pacers put them away in 5 instead of 6 of what they did last year. So I'm looking at what happened with the series. Other than Game 3, the Bucks did not look like they wanted to win this series. And yes, they were competitive in the ball games, but I could have just seen a little bit more brought out of them. But Game 4 was a dagger for the Milwaukee Bucks, in my opinion. Once Damian Lillard went down with a torn Achilles, even Damian Lillard got hurt there. When he got hurt with that play, there was no immediate foul for the Bucks to go in and save their teammate Damian Lillard, go attend to him. The only teammate that picked him up off the court was Kyle Kuzma, which is sad as hell with Giannis, your franchise player, not even helping up his dynamic player, his dynamic duo partner, his tag team partner of Damian Lillard off the ground, and Kyle Kuzma, out of all the players he just got there. Why was Brook Lopez, Bobby Portis Jr., why were these players that have been in Milwaukee for so long not the one to help Damian Lillard off the court? So it's sad because Damian Lillard busted his ass to get back from the blood clots that we thought was going to sideline him for probably the end of the season and early of 2025 at best. But he came back a month later and then unfortunately tore his Achilles. I don't want to say that might be the end of prime Damian Lillard, but he's just at that point of his career that we might have seen the end of the prime days with a significant injury like this. But the body language from this Bucks team was horrible for Game 4. And then Game 5, they just lost in overtime to Tyrese Halliburton hitting a game-winning shot. And then you see the frustration come out of Giannis finally. Giannis finally wants to show his frustration and wants to get in the faces of Indiana Pacers players and then wants to get in the face of Tyrese Halliburton's father. Giannis, I love you, my guy, but where was this fire and passion on the court this entire series when they were giving it to you? The in-your-face style type of basketball, the back-and-forth conversations, face-to-face conversations, heated conversations with Damian Lillard and Tyrese Halliburton. Didn't that light a fire under your ass at that point? So, I don't know where this Bucks team goes. I think Giannis is going to request a trade this summer, and that's going to lead to some real conversation that Bucks fans are going to have about the future of Giannis and what is best for him moving forward and the Bucks moving forward. I think Doc Rivers is out of there for sure, but we'll see what happens with the rest of this Bucks team. But let's move on to the Western Conference here. So the Oklahoma City Thunder took care of the Memphis Grizzlies. The number 1 seeded Oklahoma City Thunder took care of the 8 seeded Memphis Grizzlies. Won that series 4-0, swept the Grizzlies. Now, OKC honestly destroyed the Grizzlies in this series. Now, I will give the Grizzlies credit for when Game 3 and Game 4 went back to Memphis. That's when they picked it up a notch because they got belt-to-ass treatments in OKC for Game 1, Game 2. But what happened in Game 3 was the Grizzlies looked like they could possibly try to make this series competitive, trailing 2-1, but then they blew a huge 29-point lead at home in Game 3. That's something you cannot do. That opened the door for OKC to have a tremendous comeback, and then OKC swept them in Game 4. Now, OKC was obviously the better offensive team, better defensive team. They were giving players like Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson some fits throughout this playoff series, and obviously they had the best player a part of the series, that being SGA, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who could be closing in on winning his first MVP award of his NBA season, NBA career thus far. But Ja Morant, I find it funny that this man said he finally figured out the the Oklahoma City Thunder, but you didn't even win a game there, sport. But as I digress, I think the real reason why the Grizzlies haven't gotten to where they need to be yet is, one, they're a young team, and two, Jaren Jackson and Ja Morant need a superstar player to help them get over the hump in the Western Conference. Possibly a Kevin Durant, possibly a Giannis. They need to trade for another star player to align themselves along Jaren Jackson and Ja Morant. They have the assets to trade, and I think Memphis Grizzlies are going to take a hard look at their roster this summer and improvements of what it takes to be a contending team out there in the Western Conference. But shout out to OKC for sweeping the Grizzlies. Now, the Rockets and the Warriors. This series, the Warriors... Oh my gosh, allergies, guys. My nose is itching. The Warriors are currently on top of the Rockets 3-1 in this series. Now, this was obviously a bad draw for this Houston Rockets team. And I said this heading into this series that the Warriors, this series gave me vibes of what the Warriors and Kings were back in 2023, where the Kings were a higher seeded than the Warriors, but the Warriors had the overall playoff experience. And it's just like deja vu in this series. Because if you don't have the playoff experience playing up against a trio like Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Jimmy Butler, who have lived in the postseason for quite some time now, whatever you do in the regular season goes out the window. And other than Game 2, the Warriors have had their hands all over the Rockets, having their way with them, and they've been the better basketball team in this series. That's the reason why they have a 3-1 lead in this series. But the inexperience showed for the Rockets, especially in Game 4. They missed a total of 12 free throws, as I get tongue-tied, 12 free throws in this game in Game 4. If you make at least 6 out of 12, you win that game in a close contested game against the Golden State Warriors in Game 4. But the backcourt duo of Jalen Green and Fred VanVleet is just not working, and it's not going to be enough for the future if the Rockets continue to go out there for playoff series in the future running this backcourt duo. It's not enough. And Jalen Green, I'm starting to question, could he be the franchise guy? And I know he's raw. This is a new experience for him in the playoffs, but I just haven't seen him overcome any type of adversity in this series. When he's double teamed by the Warriors, he shuts down. Or anybody that has the defensive assignment on Jalen Green at times, he can't overcome adversity. And that's alarming for somebody that is supposed to be your number one scoring option that can't get going in a playoff series. Who are you supposed to depend on after that? So if the Rockets do trade for a star, I would not be surprised if Jalen Green is not off the table for being a part of a deal, possibly to get Kevin Durant or Devin Booker. I don't think he should be untouchable because the film is talking to me that he is going to be a tremendous player one day, but is he worth trading for a star player in Houston to play alongside a young, talented team? If he has to be a sacrifice, I think yes. Next series in the Western Conference, you have the third-seeded Los Angeles Lakers trailing against the sixth-seeded Timberwolves. The Timberwolves are currently up in this series 3-1. Now, if the Timberwolves can continue to what they did in the last 3 games, their last 3 victories, they're going to win this series. And I said last week on the podcast that if the Timberwolves could do what they did in Game 1, being the more physical team, using their depth to their advantage, that they could possibly kick the Lakers out in the first round. Now, the Lakers were my prediction in 6. I did not see this coming. In Game 3, the Timberwolves pulled it out at their first home game of the series, and once again, they were the more physical team in Game 3. Anthony Edwards erupted with a total of 43 points in this ball game. But Game 4, Game 4 was absolute cinema. That was physical basketball. I like the back and forth that we were seeing between Anthony Edwards and LeBron James. But in Game 4, it also showed why the Timberwolves are the more physical team. They have the size advantage. They have Rudy Gobert, Naz Reid, and Julius Randle. Their two centers and power forward they have the size advantage over anybody, Jackson Hayes and anybody on that Lakers team. But the Lakers their bench only scoring 6 points in Game 4 showed why the Timberwolves had the rotation advantage over the Lakers. And JJ Redick, coaching-wise, it made me scratch my head why they did not send any substitutes out for the second half. The Lakers, you could tell LeBron James, Luka Doncic, Austin Reeves, the entire starting five was exhausted by the fourth quarter. And LeBron James not scoring 0 points in the fourth quarter. You need to show up when your team needs you, when the moment arises, when your team needs you the most. LeBron James wasn't there. 0 points is unacceptable to me. Unacceptable. And now you're down 3-1. I really thought the Lakers had a chance of making the Western Conference Finals. Doesn't look like that's going to happen this year. And last but not least, you had the Nuggets and the Clippers. Now, they do play Game 5 tonight. This series is tied 2-2. And I think this is the best series in the Western Conference right now in the first round. Hell, best series throughout the first round, East and West. But other than Game 3, when the Clippers blew out the Nuggets, this has been a red-hot competitive 7-game series. This is what basketball fans like to see. Game 4 was mixed with emotions of James Harden, Nikola Jokic barking at each other, going back and forth, where the two teams had to separate the two-star players, and James Harden was this close of smacking Aaron Gordon in the face. And I'm glad the referees got it right. Nobody got ejected, and we just got a great second half of basketball after that. I mean, Nikola Jokic has been unguardable, the best player throughout this entire series. The Clippers went on a huge fourth quarter run to get back into the game, but it was crazy that Aaron Gordon had that put-back dunk with 0.1 seconds on the clock, got it off in time to hit the game winner for the Nuggets, and that's where we lie here, with the series being tied 2-2. Definitely some great basketball going on in the Western Conference, but those are my thoughts on the NBA playoffs in the first round for the 2024-25 NBA playoffs.